parachuted into a hornet's nest. Incredibly, they landed on a VC tunnel. What they unearthed in it almost changed the course of the war.
What we landed on was the headquarters of the Cholon Jardin area. We actually even pulled out the hit list, right, that the Viet Cong had of the senior officers in Saigon, in the order that they were going to be hit.
The VC hit list whetted their curiosity. The tunnel rats had unearthed a gold mine. They descended deeper, down 3 levels, but stopped before opening a trap door.
Had they gone through that trap door, we would have unleashed hell, because that was the only entrance into the heavy headquarters for the Saigon area.
One trapdoor and we could have changed the whole war. Really, it's terrifying to know that there are that many people down below us. But also, I don't know what would have happened, to be quite honest with you.
They only realized how close they were to the enemy headquarters after the war was over. Tragically, Operation Crimp also marked the first tunnel rat casualty. Corporal Bob Bartell got trapped in a small tunnel filled with smoke. Ray Forrester went down the tunnel to try and pull his friend out of the tunnel shaft.
I must have gone in a few times. I just couldn't move him, couldn't budge him. He was just stuck at the bottom of this trapdoor. I remember trying to dig out the tunnel entrance, but again, that really wasn't satisfactory. Yeah, I don't know at that stage. I guess later on he was dead, but I didn't know that at the time. I thought I could try and get him out. When I finally had to give in, I went back up top and
Ray Forrester was unable to save his friend and reluctantly, following orders, returned to the surface.
Sorry.
They realized that the smoke from the Mighty Mite had sucked all the oxygen out of the tunnel, and Corporal Bartell suffocated to death. Operation Crimp was ended 5 days later, and American and Australian forces retreated. With the incredible discovery of a vast enemy underground network, however, more tunnel rats would be needed to risk their lives and volunteer for this deadly mission.
Westmoreland requested an additional 206,000 troops at the height of the Tet Offensive in 1968. This top-secret request was codenamed Operation Complete Victory. Modern Marvels will continue in a moment.
January 1966. The 25th Tropic Lightning Infantry Division began to arrive in Vietnam. By the end of 1967, they would number 17,000 strong. Their mission was to eliminate the Viet Cong, destroy their subterranean stronghold, and protect Saigon. The 25th set up 3 camps, each bordering the treacherous Iron Triangle, Boi Loi, and Hobo Woods. The main base at Cu Chi gave them quick access to these danger zones. Strategic planners, however, soon realized that they had made a fatal error. The 25th began taking fire inside the Cu Chi base camp.
We had 3 tunnels under the 25th Division's base camp. They were built before they arrived. When we attacked, they were taken by surprise.
The 25th Infantry used earth movers called Rome plows and explosives to destroy the tunnels under the base. It took them months, but eventually they were satisfied that they had eliminated the threat from within. Military planners were now just beginning to realize the extent of the tunnel problem. Despite the best efforts of the tunnel rats, who destroyed dozens of enemy bunkers and tunnels, the Viet Cong expanded their system. By 1967, the tunnel network reached into Saigon itself.
The apex of the complex was literally in the Saigon suburbs. It's sort of been like if the Germans would have had a tunnel going into London in 1940.
Incredibly, even the commander of all Viet Cong forces, the leader of the resistance fighters in South Vietnam, Tran Bac Dang, would direct guerrilla operations by night and slip into Saigon and operate undetected during the day.
I live half my life in Saigon and half my life in the tunnels. My house was next door to the American ambassadors.
On January 10th, 1967, the 25th Infantry Division launched Operation Cedar Falls. The goal was to trap and crush the Viet Cong dug in and under the Iron Triangle. Newly recruited 25th Trooper C.W. Bowman arrived in Vietnam a few days before he went into the killing zone.
When you were over there, you just had to reside to the fact that you were going to die. You know, you probably weren't going to make it, so you were going to do the best you could and fight as hard as you could.
Patrol comrade Gary Heater was never too far from his close friend Bowman.
You know, I kind of want to get attached to somebody so I can have a friend over there, and I didn't want to get too friendly to too many people in case, you know, you get hurt or lose somebody. But he's the only one I ever got close to.
Incoming troops were filled with tales of the horrors faced by a small band of men, the Tunnel Rats, who dared to chase the fierce Viet Cong down into their tunnels.
Sometimes they would put right underneath the entrance, they'd put a man trap, a large punji pit. Instead of landing on solid ground, you'd land into a punji pit.
Operation Cedar Falls marked the initiation of a new breed of tunnel rat. So many tunnels were being uncovered and no time to wait for engineers to search them. The petrifying task was now open to regular foot soldiers gutsy enough to volunteer.
In our unit, you know, it was, hey, you know, we need somebody to go in the tunnel, and we went, you know, and you took a 45 and you chambered around and cocked the hammer back and went in.
Bowman and Heater volunteered for tunnel rat duty together.
CW and I, we're closer than brothers. And I'd go in a lot of tunnels, and he'd come in behind me, or he'd go front. I felt safe when he was with me. That's the big thing.
Gary and I were, you know, we were just a couple old G.I. Joes, you know, and looked at us as, I guess, a challenger or whatever, and stepped up to do it.
During Operation Cedar Falls, Bowman and Heater were initiated in the terrifying hazards of tunnel rat duty.
He pushed the trap door open and nothing happened, you know, so Gary kind of stuck his arm up there with the light first and then just kind of eased up, looked over the edge, and he dropped back down. He said, God, he says, there's a booby trap up there, you know, and so what the hell's up there? He says, I don't know. He says, but it doesn't look good, you know, and we looked back up there and Claymore was sitting up there on a tripod.
Luckily, the Claymore mine was not booby-trapped, and Bowman and Heater surfaced safely. Operation Cedar Falls ended in frustration and failure. Although some documents, weapons, and ammunition were recovered, the enemy was far from routed. The guerrillas quickly and secretively rebuilt the tunnels that were destroyed. 25th Infantry Tunnel Rats Bowman and Heater would soon return to action on new operations. Their biggest fear was meeting the enemy face to face. In the claustrophobic confines of the tunnel, the rats knew only one would emerge alive. Tunnel rat Gary Heater was shocked by his first underground encounter.
It was turned out to be a 3-4-year-old kid. This kid was just sitting there. I guess his dad just left him there. Maybe he heard me coming. But I just looked at him, and he looked at me, and, you know, I had the flashlight on him, and I just kept on going. It scared me. He was just a kid, but it could have been Daddy.
The one time Bowman went in a tunnel by himself, he met the real enemy. He crawled through a long, narrow passageway that opened up to a large chamber, a recovery room, with VC guerrillas lying in bunks.
They had, like, their weapons up against the wall and stuff, and I kind of stumbled in there. When I came up in there and shined the light, you know, and boom, it was like Keystone Cops. They started reaching for the weapons, and I started shooting. Flash, this happens, flash, that happens. people hollering, screaming, people shooting, your heart's pounding. I mean, it's all reaction. You really don't think, you just start shooting. If you hesitate and think about it, you're the one that's probably going to die. I shot, you know, and get the hell out of there as fast as I could.
Bowman remarkably survived this terrifying face-to-face unscathed. Yet his tunnel rat buddy Gary Heater wouldn't be so lucky. On his last mission before flying home, he stepped on a landmine known as a Bouncing Betty.
I knew it was a Bouncing Betty because I heard the spring. As soon as I stepped, we was running through this minefield. And it went off, and it did knock me unconscious. I was awake until I got to the hospital. But I couldn't see my leg.
Gary Heater fortunately survived, but spent 2 years in a veterans hospital before he could walk again. As 1967 closed, American military planners raised the stakes. B-52 arc light strikes increased in ferocity and breadth. U.S. planes dropped massive payloads of iron bombs and chemical defoliants that would eventually reduce the Iron Triangle and the Hobo Woods to a desolate moonscape. Into this maelstrom, a new crop of America's youth arrived to do battle. The bravest volunteered to be tunnel rats. In the dark depths, they fought for their nation, their honor, and their lives.
During Operation Cedar Falls, an estimated 550 Viet Cong guerrillas were either killed or captured. The tunnels of Vietnam will continue in a moment.
Frustrated with their inability to quell the dogged Viet Cong resistance, American military leaders raised the stakes and the heat. Toward the end of 1967, massive B-52 or arc light strikes increased in South Vietnam. They pounded the Iron Triangle and the surrounding danger zones. On the ground, Rome plows were liberally used to unearth and destroy tunnels. Chemical defoliants and napalm drops eliminated the jungle canopy used as cover by the enemy.
Well, by the time all that was done, you defoliate the thing, all these holes start popping up all over the place. And so there was just a lot more holes than there were tunnel rats, I think. So they would just say, well, anybody want to go down? And there was always a few of us that would.
The tunnel rats found their own reasons to justify their dangerous mission.
I enjoyed that mystique. I enjoyed that whisper when the new guys would come in and they'd say, that's Corey, you know, he's crazy. I hate to admit it, but I loved the rush.
25th Infantryman and tunnel rat Art Tejeda turned the perilous task into a high-stakes treasure hunt.
Anything in that tunnel belongs to you, aside that it going to S2 intelligence, like maps and paperwork and stuff like that. But you find uniforms, you find weapons, you know, pistols, bolt-action rifles and stuff like that, which you can use for barter, which became pretty good. And it became to be a good business.
The Viet Cong were ready as ever to repel interloping tunnel rats.
They would tie pit vipers, and they would hang them upside down with their tails. So if you weren't aware of them, and you didn't look close enough, you stick your head in one of them tunnels and bang.
I saw one unfortunate young man who was new. He didn't exactly know what he was doing. He crawled up. At least he knew enough to get down, but he crawled up to a tunnel and looked over the edge, and he was shot right in the face. The guy was just sitting right there.
Tragic experience taught the rats to drop hand grenades into a tunnel entrance before they went in. The new rats adopted the now time-honored tools and techniques of the tunnel rat trailblazers.
Other soldiers would hold me by my ankles and they put me head first. I'd go in there with a .45, my right hand, flashlight on my left.
Once in the tunnel, the new rats were prey to the same heart-pounding trials and tribulations of their predecessors. 25th Infantryman Ken Corey volunteered to enter and search enemy tunnels.
You were always listening to hear if there were You could hear a pin being pulled out of a grenade, or hear a rifle being cocked.
Infantryman Gary Schooler arrived in Vietnam in October 1967. Within days,